WCNC Charlotte. This is Flashpoint.
Thanks for joining us for a special edition of Flashpoint. I'm Sarah French, filling in for Ben. Today we have a special episode for you focused on domestic violence, as October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Here are three staggering statistics. 1 in 3 women will be impacted by sexual assault or domestic violence during their lifetime. 1 in every 4 girls and 1 in every 6 boys will be sexually assaulted before their 18th birthday. In the U.S., 3 women are killed every day by an intimate partner. And today, we're talking with local organizations about what to look for and how you can help. Joining us today is Karen Parker, the president and CEO of Safe Alliance. Good morning, Karen.
Good morning.
So first, for someone who's watching who doesn't know what Safe Alliance is, how would you explain it?
Safe Alliance provides domestic violence and sexual assault services here in Charlotte, Mecklenburg, and we work to provide wraparound services. So we do everything from shelter to helping people get protective orders, to providing counseling, to advocating for them and helping them safety plan. So we really want to work with people throughout the process so that they can heal during their journey.
How would you explain domestic violence for someone watching who thinks, well, that could never happen to me or someone that I know?
Well, we do know that it can happen to anyone, and it really is about power and control. That's the thing to keep in mind. Sometimes there are bruises, but sometimes there aren't. It really is something where you see one person taking control over another one. It can be very coercive. It can be where one person has control over where the other person goes or what they wear or what they eat, anything like that. So we're really looking more for control than we are for the physical injuries.
Talk about all the different programs that you have.
Well, we have our shelter, which is a domestic violence shelter. And actually during the pandemic, we've been operating both a shelter and a hotel facility so that we can have social distancing. We also have an office called Victim Assistance where we help people get protective orders. And we have an office in Lake Norman. And then we have our Sexual Assault Center, which is in Uptown Charlotte. And that's where we help victims of sexual assault. So we have a range of services from counseling to advocacy to, from the immediate crisis all the way through the issue, dealing with the issue.
Talk about how the pandemic has affected domestic violence victims.
Well, when the pandemic first started, we saw a 45% increase in our calls to our hotline. And that was because a lot of people were trying to figure out where they could go and not be stuck with a perpetrator in a house. And so we answered a lot of calls then. We saw the calls getting much more complicated because in addition to dealing with domestic violence, people were dealing with issues around maybe having to work from home or maybe having to have their children at home from school. And so that just compounded the issues. And so our hotline calls that used to take 10 or 15 minutes were then starting to take 30 minutes or 45 minutes. So the issues just became a lot more complicated during the pandemic.
You were talking about some of the signs of domestic violence, that controlling, what are you wearing, where are you? What should parents be looking out for when it comes to our kids?
Well, it's important for parents to look for a change in personality, or maybe your child is becoming more isolated. Isolation is a big, big piece. Perpetrators like to isolate victims because then they have more control over them. So it's important to think of it that way. You do want to watch cell phones. You want to watch, where your kids are going, who they're with. Also, you want to watch if there is any kind of injury or something that was unexpected that came up and the teenager seems to be making excuses for their boyfriend or their girlfriend. You want to look for things like that.
And isn't it true, it takes a victim like 7 times before they actually leave their abuser?
Yeah, that's true because, abusers aren't bad all the time. Sometimes they're very charming. Sometimes they're very loving. And so a lot of times victims will go back hoping that things are going to change. And it's very normal for a person to return to an abusive relationship and to come back out of it. And one thing we always tell people is that we're here for you anytime, no matter how many times you've gone back. You can always come to us when you need help.
And you have a big event coming up. Tell us about that.
We do. We have our annual Breakfast of Hope, and that is something we do every year. It's going to be virtual this year, and we invite people to come and join us. We have Rachel Brooks, who is a sexual assault survivor. She wrote a book called Beads, and she's going to be our keynote speaker. Bank of America is presenting for us, and we're really excited. People can sign up to be a champion of hope, and that means that you can ask your friends to donate on a fundraising page and help us raise dollars for Safe Alliance, and that helps make sure that we stay stable through the year and that we're able to answer the call, even during a pandemic, to victims all over the community.
So finally, I want to ask you, for people watching, how can they help? If they know someone that they think might be a victim of domestic violence, or maybe they're suffering from this themselves, what do you suggest they do?
Well, if you know someone who's dealing with domestic violence, definitely reach out and start a conversation. They may not be ready to open up to you right now, but it's important for them to know that you care. And it's important for you to believe them and to listen without judgment and to offer resources. So offer a hotline number, let them know that there are services available, because many people don't realize that services are there and that we're here 24/7 until they are in that situation. So we always try to educate the community so that there are a lot of people out there who know about us and can reach out to a friend or family member when they need us the most.
And Karen, what is that hotline number for you guys?
It's the Greater Charlotte Hope Line, and the number is 980-771-HOPE, and that's HOPE is 4673.
Karen, thank you so much. Such a pleasure speaking with you today, and thank you for all the work that you do in our community.
Thank you.
More Flashpoint after the break. Welcome back. We continue the special episode of Flashpoint, where we are focusing on domestic violence, as October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Joining us now, Sherelle Carrington, the Executive Director of the Jamie Kimball Foundation, and Rose Planner, who is on the board. Ladies, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having us. Yes.
So for those who aren't familiar with the Jamie Kimball Foundation, can you give us an overview?
Sure. The Jamie Kimball Foundation for Courage was founded by Ron and Jan Kimball. Ron was the former deputy city manager, and unfortunately, Labor Day of 2012, he and his wife received a call about the untimely death of his daughter. And when they were doing interviews regarding her tragic death, it was then that they said, you know, we didn't know about the warning signs. So we want to do something so that no one else experiences what we experiences. So what they did is they started the Jamie Kimball Foundation for Courage in honor of her name and her livelihood. And they are focused on prevention, education, awareness, and research.
So what are those warning signs that people should be aware of?
I think when we talk about domestic violence, we're really talking about an unhealthy relationship, you know, a relationship based on power and control. And the warning signs really can span the board, but I like to think of it as physical abuse, sexual abuse, even financial abuse, digital abuse. So physical abuse, meaning when a perpetrator is hitting, choking, kicking, punching, when somebody's trying to control your money, finances, that person doesn't allow you to have a job. There's isolation between the perpetrator and your support system, your family, your friends. There's heavy criticism, yelling, violent language, making threats, intimidating. These are all warning signs that this relationship is unhealthy. And that's really, I love how Sherelle, introduced the Jamie Kimball Foundation for Courage. Jamie was one of my best friends.
That's what I was just going to say. Yeah.
Yeah, and I saw a lot of this emotional abuse playing out in her relationship, and I saw the isolation that the person she was with was really trying to drive a wedge between Jamie, her family, and friends. So I mean, I think it's important as somebody who knows somebody who's in a relationship where this is present to be brave to have that conversation, right? Be able to say, this relationship doesn't look healthy. I'm concerned for you. So I think that's really what defines an unhealthy relationship.
Talk to me about this teens program that you guys have started.
The CDC has researched teen violence, and this is an evidence-based model for we want to be able to provide prevention models for young people, especially in school. The sooner we can educate young people and help them understand what a healthy relationship looks like, the better chance they're going to have in being able to extricate themselves from a relationship that's unhealthy. So we started this model that we call it the Courage Clubs, where we encourage students to get their friends together, form a club in school where they're having conversations around healthy and unhealthy relationships. And we encourage them to to create fun activities where they can get peers understanding what abuse looks like. And like I said, having a dialogue around healthy relationships. And then, as kind of to top it all off, we have our annual Teens for Courage Summit. We really provide experts to get in front of these young people and start the conversation about, let's talk about unhealthy relationships. Let's talk. I mean, have any of you experienced it? And just, getting young people aware of what their relationships look like, and if it is unhealthy, and how to act. Right. And how to help their friends understand when something isn't right.
Sherelle, how has the pandemic really impacted this organization?
We've had to adjust. It's been quite an adjustment in that although we can't be in person in many cases, we find through our social media, like we're talking today, via Zoom or WebEx, where we're reaching our students. The beauty of the way that students interact via their phone or via their computer, we're able to be there real time with them. So in a way, it's kind of a good situation because we're there real time. We're able to provide resources, as Rose mentioned. We want to make sure that the teens have the right information that they're sharing with their friends because they speak their language. But we want to make sure that the language that they're speaking to one another is the right information about prevention regarding the warning signs and what to do, not to be a bystander, to be someone of support, providing information on the services that can help them if they find themselves in the situation of being victimized at that moment.
So for people watching, maybe they're in a domestic violence situation, maybe they think they know someone. What's your advice to them and how can they help?
Number one, we tell them to, if they know someone or if they themselves are in a situation, first thing we tell them is to call 911. Yep. Definitely get out of the situation immediately, call someone for help. Secondly, we ask for them to go to our website at jkffc.org to look at some of the resources that are being offered. We partner with organizations in North and South Carolina that provide direct services if they need those. So we ask them to go to our website to learn more, or they can call us directly, and we will also forward them to those services and those agencies who can help them.
And just to add to, I think a big concept that I think people hear, but they don't really understand is safety planning. Mm-hmm. And that's the idea of if you are experiencing abuse in a relationship and you want to get out but are not sure how, I always say to people, plan for an emergency, plan for and have a to-go bag ready. That's the biggest thing. Have a to-go bag, leave it at your neighbor's house, have clothes, have extra money, have phone numbers. Be ready to leave a relationship if it becomes violent and you're afraid for your life. And I think that's a big thing for people to understand who are in a relationship is that, you can get out. There are resources, but make sure you have that safety planning knowledge. And you can find that information also on our website at Jamie Kimball Foundation for courage.org.
Well, ladies, thank you so much for being with us today. And thank you for all the tireless work that you are doing in our community. It's so, so important.
No, thank you for having us, because the more people who understand the impact of abuse, the more we'll understand that healthy relationships is what you need to be in. But there are organizations and resources available to help you get out of that situation.
Right. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. More
Thank you for
Flashpoint
having us.
after the break. Bye, guys. According to the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence, nearly 20 people per minute are abused by an intimate partner in the United States. North Carolina reported nearly 60,000 domestic violence calls between 2019 and 2020. Turning Point is a 42-bed domestic violence shelter in Monroe, making a difference and providing a safe haven for victims.
Well, I think if you want a tangible, visible display of resilience and the human spirit, you will find it here.
Jessie Lindberg is the executive director of Turning Point, a 42-bed domestic violence shelter in Monroe.
We serve people who are fleeing intimate partner violence. We provide 24-hour response for survivors of sexual assault. And then we run a children's advocacy center where we serve children who have been sexually abused, physically abused, or have witnessed pretty significant violence in the home.
I started working with domestic violence shelters after my friend and colleague was killed, the victim of domestic violence.
I think a lot of people, 1 in 4 families we know, is impacted by domestic violence. So it's far more likely than not that you either you've experienced it or you know somebody who has.
Before she was killed, I think, I don't know why, I just thought domestic violence happened to other people.
You know, on our brochures, you will not see a bruised person anywhere because that's a dangerous cliche. You know, there are so many forms of abuse.
Hannah K. Herdlinger and Pamela Blunt, both victims of domestic violence. Pamela witnessed her mother's murder at the hands of an abusive boyfriend. Hannah K. experienced abuse from her now ex-husband. Both women have worked with Turning Point to help other victims.
In my situation, domestic violence didn't win. The people that I get to touch because I get to share her story, it is just absolutely amazing.
But Pamela brings the child aspect. We get her view through the eyes of a child.
Turning Point is more than just a safe place to stay. They provide safety, security, and programs to help domestic violence survivors like myself get back on our feet.
Hannah K. is just a warrior for victims and survivors, and she gives a voice to the people that aren't quite there in their healing journey. We want people to be ambassadors for this work.
So how can you make a difference?
We have 3 stores that we run, secondhand stores. They're called Second Chance Boutiques. We always need supplies here at the shelter. You know, with COVID especially, we have been, people are here a lot more. And so we're going through products like paper towels, toilet paper, snacks for the kids, food. We also, here at the shelter, we certainly always need volunteers.
It's been such a tough year for so many. And Jessie just wants to make sure the families of Turning Point know how loved they are.
They too can get past what's happened to them and, live a violence-free life that's really meaningful.
After the break, hear from former Panther star Steve Smith and what he calls his defining moment. Most of us know Steve Smith as a former Panther star, but today you're getting a look at the man behind the ball. I had the chance to sit down with him to talk about what really drives him. He opens up about his childhood and what he calls his defining moment.
Steve Smith is electric, passionate, driven. The man he is today, fueled by the boy he was.
There's these statistics that say that if you witness domestic violence as a child, as a young male, that you're prone to repeating that behavior.
As a young child, Steve Smith saw his mother repeatedly abused by her boyfriend.
And, he would beat her and talk down to her.
He knew what he was seeing was wrong, but he couldn't stop it. Steve was a sophomore in high school when years of turbulence came to a boiling point.
When your mom comes home after school and says, pack your things, we're leaving, you're like, why are we leaving? We were on the run for about 2 or 3 weeks, living out of hotels, and it was a defining moment for me.
Years later, the pain of that moment for his mom still evident.
I'm at home, get a phone call from her, he died. And she was emotional about it. Even though she went through all that stuff with him, she still loved him.
It was an explosive existence that left lifelong scars.
It shaped and molded her to where she raised 2 young men that were a little hardened and very hesitant with people. The wounds that it has created in you. There's wounds inside of me to this day.
Do you ever sit back and look at where you grew up and how you grew up and all the success that you've had in your life and just think, wow.
When I go back home, it's a great reminder.
Family is important to Steve. In fact, he wouldn't have created the Steve Smith Foundation without the blessing of his mother.
Why did you feel it was important to call your mom and ask her?
And it's personal for her. To talk about anybody's personal life, I think you have to seek their permission. And so she came back, she was like, yeah, I'm ready to not have this secret anymore.
The foundation helps families in need and victims of domestic violence. In November of 2016, the foundation opened the Steve Smith Wellness Center, a dream sparked by a trip to Nigeria.
That was a mission trip and the first time I ever been out of the country.
Really?
Yes, and it was mind-blowing. But those places out there look just like some of the places here in Charlotte.
Since then, the center has provided more than 1,500 people with medical help and free counseling.
But there's people right here that need your assistance, need your help.
You just have to look.
You have to look.
Yeah.
It's an approach Steve wants to instill in his children.
I want to build them to be humble, to serve, to think outside of themselves, and also to smile and laugh. How I am with my kids is really how I'm be judged more than anything. And that's very important to me. My success of work is great, but my success as a man is based on what I have instilled in my kids. Nothing's better than when you come home, Daddy, you know, it just kind of, that's better than a touchdown, that's better than anything.
Thank you so much for joining us for this special edition of Flashpoint. Ben will be back next week. Have a wonderful weekend, everyone.